Hey guys, welcome to Local Relief Live. I am your host, Heather Hackett, and today we have a great show for you. If you've watched us before or listened to us before, our whole goal is really educating locals and people on services that are going to help them either prepare for, survive, or recover from disasters. And today is no different. So today is very cool. Today we have Erik Salna. He is with the Florida International University, which is FIU, and he is the Associate Director of Education and Outreach for FIU's Extreme Events Institute. Erik, I can't thank you enough. So thank you so much for being on Local Relief Live.
You're welcome, Heather. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So FIU and this amazing thing that is behind you, at least on the image. So behind you is the infamous wall of wind, of which I saw the first time I met you, and it no pun intended on it, blew me away, but it really, really did. I think it's phenomenal what it does and what it offers. And I'm learning more even today, of what it does. So why don't you tell me about the program and about the infamous wall of wind?
Sure. No, thank you very much. So the Wall of Wind program all gets started to begin with. One way to answer that is let's go back to 1992. Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew was a Category 5 hurricane that hit South Florida with devastating effects. And as an end result of that Hurricane Andrew's landfall, millions of dollars came pouring into South Florida. And there was a big campaign called We Will Rebuild. And part of that money went to an endowment to start our research center, the International Hurricane Research Center, which grew. And more recently, we are now also the Extreme Events Institute. So the program was born, and then the idea of the Wall of Wind program came about. And it all had to do with the built environment. How can we build better, build stronger, and really message the importance of resilience to communities? And a big part of that is the built environment and building codes. So there's, as you see the picture behind me, 12 big fans. We didn't start with 12, we started with 2. They were like 2 airboat engines, one on top of another on a trailer that we used to bring up to buildings and test. And then from 2 fans, we graduated to 6 fans, 6 500 horsepower Chevy engines that were turning props. And the engineers learned from the 6 fans. And then they said, let's go bigger. And the end result is the picture behind me where we have the 12 fans, 12 700 horsepower electric fan motors, and creating up to Category 5 hurricane conditions. And we can also put water into the system to replicate 8 to 9 inches of rainfall. So all of it is for the purpose of research, to learn how the built environment can be designed stronger, and the importance of building codes.
Wow. Just for an idea, obviously these are behind you on an image. How big are these fans? Just one by itself.
So each fan is about 6 feet in diameter. So the whole fan capsule is about 8 feet. So we're looking at almost 2 stories high in terms of the size of this system. Pictures and video look pretty cool, but until you see it in person, then you're like, wow, that's a huge facility. And it is.
Yeah.
To make it all work, I'll mention the engineers had to do a lot of things to replicate a hurricane, but 2 major things. One was, how do we get to Category 5 winds? Just having those big 12 fans wasn't going to get us there. So they had to use a law of physics that if you contract a space and a volume, it'll speed up the air going in it. And so just behind those fans, there is that contraction zone that got us to Category 5. Just the 12 fans themselves, we will only had Category 1. So that law of physics was critical.
Wow.
And the other thing was the personality of a hurricane wind. It's not nice and straight and laminar. It's very turbulent. So on the other side of these fans, there's a big flow management that has roughness features and spires that will then create that turbulence of a hurricane, and then also the atmospheric boundary layer where wind increases with height. So put it all together. By the time that wind hits that turntable, where that test specimen is, it's as close to what Mother Nature creates in the real world.
That's unbelievable. But how did you get involved in this?
I've been at FIU around 13, 14 years. I've had a journey as a meteorologist. First part of my career was over 25 years in television weather, but then I decided to leave full-time TV weather to get more into full-time weather education and research. So then that took me to a couple of different places, the Disaster Survival House in Deerfield Beach, where we were teaching hurricane preparedness, then to a new startup company with Brian Norcross and Max Mayfield called America's Emergency Network. And then from there, the opportunity to come to FIU and be a part of this great program.
Wow. Now, as far as the program goes, you're the associate director of FIU's It's Extreme Event Institute. Tell me about this institute and what that offers.
As I mentioned, we started as the International Hurricane Research Center, and then we grew into the Extreme Events Institute. So we're all hurricane focused. And so we have different teams, research teams doing different types of research. Obviously, we have the Wall of Wind engineering research team. But as we expanded and became the Extreme Events Institute, we have a team that works on a computer model with the state of Florida. It's a computer model that predicts what the damage cost to a landfalling hurricane would be to the state of Florida. That helps determine and measure insurance rates. We have another team that
Mm.
does storm surge modeling. The National Hurricane Center, which by the way is located right on our campus, they have a storm surge model called SLOSH. It's been around for many years. We have one called CEST, CEST. So what's really cool is our research team works hand in hand with the National Hurricane Center to help improve their storm surge model. And then we have some other researchers working on hurricane formation and intensity. And then, of course, the Wall of Wind program, the wind engineering program. But the Extreme Events Institute kind of had a bigger picture and a bigger story, because if you go to our homepage on the Extreme Events Institute, front and center, it's called the Hazard Risk Equation, created by our director, Dr. Rich Olson. The insurance industry knows it very well. But the end result of a hurricane or any natural hazard, whether it be an emergency, disaster, or catastrophe, has to do with the hazard, but then what's called exposures and vulnerabilities. Exposures, Heather, is how many people in buildings in harm's way, and the vulnerabilities is how good are their building codes, best practices, building practices, preparedness, emergency management. And that varies from community to community. So it talks about natural hazards in this context and a little bit of a different angle, but that vulnerabilities part relates to the Wall of Wind, building codes. If we had better building codes all across the country, it would help limit damage and then limit the outcome of any
Yeah.
natural hazard.
So let's say I'm a builder, or let's say I'm a resident, or let's say, how has that wall of wind impacted and how does it continue to impact building codes? How do people actually use it?
So what's great is that it's a research facility. So the biggest part of the business model is research. We are currently a National Science Foundation facility, funded facility. We're part of what's called the Natural Hazard Experimental Facility Network across the United States through NSF. So there are facilities doing water, we do wind, earthquake, lots of different aspects of natural hazards. So we're part of this great network. And so what it means then for professors across the United States at other universities, if they get grant funding through NSF for a wind engineering project, they can bring it here to the Wall of Wind to do their research. And that research eventually makes its way to our everyday lives and us as residents in terms of how engineering designs can be approved upon. The other part of the business model is private industry. So if you have a company and you have a new product that you want to get tested, you can also come to the Wall of Wind and do a series of tests for new product design and research development. And then we can't forget the students. The
Yeah.
students that are involved in this program, all the way from undergraduate, graduate, PhD work, and so on, they get hands-on this facility. There's lots of different engineering types of engineering out there, civil, mechanical, electrical. The wind engineering is a small subset of civil. There aren't many wind engineering programs like us. So our students, the next generation of wind engineers to keep push the ball forward, they get hands-on experience in something very unique, and they get hired quickly by engineering
I
firms
bet.
anywhere across the country.
I bet. I don't even know if you know that I was a teacher. I used to teach high school. I taught business and I taught a class called design, which was it was out of the box thinking. It was critical thinking. It was great. But as far as the students go and the kids go, what's their favorite? What's their initial reaction to the wall of wind? I would imagine they get responses and get creative and try to do some crazy stuff near the wall. What's their overall response when they first see it?
Well, they're amazed and then they're so excited. So the FIU students within wind engineering that are part of it, they then are usually connected with one of our research faculty, and then they'll usually then help with their research project. And then eventually, if they're earning their master's or their PhD, they'll then come up with their own project. And then our faculty is then their advisor. I will mention also a big part of our funding is the Florida Division of Emergency Management. So every year we do get funding to do research projects specifically funded by Florida to help all Floridians. Now, even that research can help people across the country, but it's a big part of our one of our big partners with the whole operation.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what is your favorite part, or what's the part that you still are just either surprised by, or what's the one thing that, keeps you excited about going to the Wall of Wind?
Well, it's a one of a kind. It's so unique and it has such a great purpose and mission. The big picture, FIU is a research focused university. FIU loves to talk about the Wall of Wind, but bottom line, how it's helping all of us as residents. It's a research facility that eventually, it helps with the building of homes and schools and government buildings, or you name it. It's a place then where you're seeing innovation. You're at the spear of new products. So seeing all of that is very exciting, and realizing how important it is we need to make communities across the entire nation more resilient.
Yeah.
Extreme events are not going away. And we just had a killing tornado outbreak, unfortunately, here in the last week. So every year that we have hurricanes, every year we have tornadoes, every year we have flood events, every year we have severe storms. And so they're just becoming too expensive. And every large event is $1 billion event, which relates to that hazard risk equation, exposure, how many
Right.
buildings and people in harm's way. So building codes, Florida became the leader after Hurricane Andrew. And Florida is the example for the rest of the nation on building codes. They need to change nationwide, and it's very slow. And once you leave Florida, unfortunately, you don't have strong building codes. And consequently, you have tremendous amounts of damage. And then there's that spin cycle: damage,
Right.
rebuild, damage, rebuild. We have to rebuild. We have to build differently, rebuild stronger, and
Yeah.
not do it the same.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. And speaking of resilience and, current weather and that type of thing, we clearly have a lot of storms here. And also we have one knocking on the door. So as far as June 1st goes, and, we have a lot of residents saying, what do I do? From your standpoint and from your advice, which clearly is pretty solid, what do you tell residents as far as how to get prepared?
So a couple of different ways to look at it. Right. The hurricane season lasts 6 months. That's half the year. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's the hurricane zone, and that's all the way from South Texas all the way up to Maine. And so the entire U.S. coastline, Gulf of America, and then the Atlantic Ocean, right? All the states. Florida is the hurricane capital of the United States. So when I talk to folks in Florida, we're the leaders in preparedness and emergency management because we have to be. We are at
Yeah.
the highest risk of a hurricane landfall each and every year. And remember, Heather, I mentioned exposures and vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
like to bring out, Florida is the third most populous state in the United States, and it's still growing. Third most populous state,
Yeah.
and
Ugh.
we're the hurricane capital of the United States.
Yeah.
Is that a collision waiting to happen? A
Oh, it absolutely. Yeah.
billion-dollar event, and we're still growing. 90% of the population lives roughly within 30 miles of our coastline. All that exposure within 30 miles, right up against the coast,
Yeah.
waiting as a sitting duck for the next hurricane. It's a big issue. You can do a whole nother podcast on insurance. That's a whole nother
Oh,
discussion.
yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes to hurricane season in Florida, it should be a way of life. It should be something we just do naturally.
Yeah.
Forget the forecast. Yeah, there's a forecast right now that it's looking like it may be a bit above average. But Max Mayfield used to always say it. The numbers don't matter. Yes, the numbers are nice to look at and they're a talking point. Bottom
Sure.
line is, if we live in Florida, you have to have a plan, be ready, get ready for the next storm. And all that is done in the 6 months that's not the hurricane season, right?
Yeah.
So it's imperative for all of us to be ready. We don't know where they're going to go. We hope they don't make landfall anywhere. They just curve out in the Atlantic. But beyond Florida, anyone in all these coastal states, from Texas to Louisiana to the Carolinas and up the eastern seaboard, this is the time of year to make sure they're ready, they have their plan, and do they live in an evacuation zone or not, and so on and so forth. So there's a kind of the to-do list that everyone needs to go through and make sure they've reviewed and they're ready.
Yeah. So interesting. We have obviously a lot of people building, right? And a lot of people are moving here. And a lot of people, they look at building codes and they look at expenses and say, it is more expensive to have your house to code or to build this to code. In your experience, because you are, you see first and foremost before anybody, before these codes even come into play, you see what the wind can do and what, even with water. I think that's awesome that you guys can do that. But you see what it can do firsthand as far as the building code goes and as far as paying that extra money to build it to code. In your opinion, is that something you should spend the money on? Is that something to skim? I want to hear it right from you because you see first and foremost more than anybody of what that code can do and what not having it cannot do, really.
Right. And so, as I mentioned, I'm not one of the researchers in the core of the research, but
Yeah.
from what I've seen, from what I've observed at the Wall of Wind and what I've learned. So, first of all, building codes work. In recent years, it never fails. Whether it be Ian or Milton or Irma, as they've hit Florida, you see the old stuff blown away. The new stuff is still there.
Yeah.
Picture after picture after picture. It's proof. These stronger building codes. So there's still a lot of old building stock across Florida, but anything that's built in the last 20 years since Andrew, the codes are better and we will be more resilient.
Yeah.
Hurricane Ian, Fort Myers Beach, it's so sad what happened there, but it was inevitable. One day it would get hit. And I used to do TV weather there for over 10 years. So I knew how vulnerable Southwest Florida and Fort Myers Beach was. And one day all the old stuff would go away. So Fort Myers Beach will look different. It is looking different. Any community that's hit. So we will be more resilient and against the water too. Anything near the coast has to be higher up in elevation. So again, that spin cycle of cost. When you look at the cost, we have to do it. Building to a higher code does not make things tremendously more expensive. Research shows even if you want to go to category 5 strength, won't pay more than about 10% on the front end of that sticker cost. An extra 10% is going to give you category 5 resilience. So
Wow.
30-year mortgage, an extra 10% even out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's part of it is no, it doesn't make things tremendously more expensive. But I will say it, building codes become very political. They become controversial. And we all know developers and contractors, they have a budget, they have a bottom line, and it becomes, a place where there's different opinions on how they should handle codes. But bottom line, they got to get better. We have to build stronger. And the building community, the developers have to fall in line for that. But it's not easy. It's not easy to pass a building code outside of Florida because of all these political pulls that come into that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to hear it from you because, you technically, you see it, engineer or not, you see it, so that's why I'm asking you. But as far as, I mean, even, we live in a new build and it works. I can tell you right now, we had, water from Debbie. We had, wind and more wind and water, with Helene and Milton. And our house, we lost like 2 screens from our cage in Debbie and no damage. I mean, I think we lost the tree in one and that was it, and they work. I mean, our street looked like nothing happened after Milton, which is incredible because the eye went right over our house. We had I think it got, close to 130-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, the codes work. They really do. They work. So I am, the first person saying, yeah, if you can spend the money or buy a smaller house that's like Fort Knox, so I'm a huge fan of that.
So you're in a newer home.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and there you go. We like to also suggest the homeowner's mitigation. So first of all, if you live in an older home, there are retrofitting techniques in the attic with gable ends. If it's an older home, how many straps does it have in the attic? You can have a contractor that's licensed to add extra those hurricane straps that hold the roof onto our walls on our homes in Florida. You leave Florida, you don't have hurricane straps in the attic, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're just pennies on the dollar, how cheap they are. We anchor our walls to our slabs. You leave Florida, look at all that tornado damage. You see homes, literally, they slid off the slab. And now it's a total loss. If they were anchored to a slab, which is just anchor bolts, which is so cheap, right? The home would still be on its slab. We've learned all these lessons. And so for our homeowners, retrofitting on an older home, but I suggest window protection, shutters, your doors, your garage door. The reality is, yes, this stuff does cost money. So maybe think of it as a 5-year mitigation plan. Do a couple of windows 1 year, do your garage door the next year, and so on and so forth, until eventually you have your whole building envelope protected. And yes, you then will get a higher rating, and the equation does work. Insurance companies will give you a discount if you mitigate the entire envelope.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of products. And what I like to tell people, we have Miami-Dade County product approved products here in South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. If you live in Houston, or if you live in New Orleans, or you live in Charleston, get yourself a Miami-Dade County approved garage door. And it's not going to cost 5 times more. If a vendor tells you that, go get another vendor.
Yeah.
So you can buy Miami-Dade product, code approved products, no matter where you live. And there's lots of companies that have products testing to the standards that we have. So then you don't have to evacuate unless you live in an evacuation zone. Then you don't have a
Right.
choice. You got to go.
Yeah. I was excited to have Erik on here. He is a tremendous wealth of knowledge. He's very passionate about this. And truly, take a look at, even if you want a cool day trip, take a look at the FIU Wall of Wind. Go. It's one of those, trips in Florida that people don't talk about that I think you should. So look it up. We're going to put videos on here as well, and we will put the links to you guys. But Erik, is there anything else you want to add?
Oh, just that. Thank you for the opportunity, and the programs like this, and what you're doing, Heather, is fantastic, and what your organization does. As the phrase is, we're all in this together. So,
Absolutely.
hurricane season is coming. We live in paradise. We love it down here, but it doesn't mean we have to live in fear and live under a rock for 6 months. What limits fear and nervousness is education and knowledge, and that's the empowering meters that that'll get us through. We can all get anxious and nervous. That's natural with any big storm that's out there, but doing the best we can to be ready, be prepared. And for anyone that lives on the coast, if there's a storm surge watch or warning and you're asked to leave, please do not
Yeah.
ignore
Yeah.
your local officials and agencies when they ask you to leave. If you are in an evacuation zone, they're doing that to save your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't say it better. 100%. Those words are listen. Yeah, just definitely listen to Erik. I can't thank you enough. Again, Erik Salna, I appreciate you. And thank you for listening to Local Relief Live. We are here to do just that, to educate you guys, tell you what's available, tell you what's there, keep Florida safe and sound, and the rest of the country for that matter. But definitely because we have hurricane season coming up. So again, we thank you. Download, like, share, do all that fun stuff. Download the app, and we will see you soon. Thanks, guys.